Please welcome the co-founder and CEO of GOAT, Eddy Liu.
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Awesome having you here. Awesome having you.
Some of your students are wearing some heat.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Even the front row, I got some wave runners up here. I should have worn better sneakers if I knew your students were gonna bring it today. But
who thought of their sneakers tonight before they came? They're like, maybe. Yeah, I'm for the first time in my life, I'm like, I don't have any game. I was like, and plus, I'm not going to be a clown and wear like
an
hoop
app for that,
shoes. Yeah,
by the way.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we'll set you up after.
Yeah, I really feel like I'm underperforming in that area. I always have functional kicks, and I'm not going to bring basketball sneakers because I'm not 20. But yeah, it looks like some of you guys have sort of stepped up. As they would say at the Oscars, what are you wearing, Eddy? Who are you wearing?
I mean, I wanted to be a little lower key. These are the Bodega collabs with New Balance. They're called the No Bad Days. So they're still pretty. It's up there, but I think some of the students here are a little more stylish than me right now. So
the Bodega New Balance. That's awesome. I didn't even know those existed.
Again, there's an app for that.
Yeah,
exactly. We'll get you.
I appreciate that. We'll
get you situated.
All of a sudden, I've just aged like another 40 years right now. Oh, Professor, you're embarrassing us. Don't say it. I didn't give the numbers in the introduction. So share with us sort of where you guys are in terms of membership, listings, countries, employees. Just give us an overview of how large GOAT has grown.
Yeah, I mean, in the span of basically, we launched in July of 2015, so it's been a little over 4 years. About 20 million members now, 750 full-time employees throughout the world. We have a facility in the UK, we have one in Hong Kong, we have a corporate office in Shanghai, we have corporate offices in New York, LA, and distribution centers in Ohio, New Jersey, Fontana, throughout the country. And then we'll talk more about this later, but in 2017 we acquired a company called Flight Club, which is a brick and mortar. They kind of started the sneaker consignment game. They have 3 physical retail locations, one in LA on Fairfax, in New York on Broadway, and in Miami now. So it's kind of, we call ourselves GOAT Group now because it's the combination of GOAT as the digital platform and Flight Club as kind of the physical manifestation of it.
Right. And you've raised some money.
A little bit.
How much have you raised to date?
197.6 million.
Approximately. And 100 million of that was a strategic investment.
Yes.
Can you share what that was?
Yeah. Foot Locker was our latest investment. It was our Series D round. It was a $100 million round. Very strategic. I mean, they're the largest sneaker retailer in the US. They have 3,000 stores in 23 countries, I think. So you can't match that physical footprint. And it's, with the convergence of online and offline, we thought that was a very strategic partner for us to be partnered with.
It seems almost more important for them than for you in some ways because where's the trend going?
Do you want to chat about that now or do you want to chat about it later?
I'm
happy to chat about it now. But,
No, we'll chat about it in a bit.
Okay.
We'll chat about it in a bit.
Okay.
And for those who haven't used the GOAT app, tell us how it works, and then we'll go backwards and talk about life.
How about because I think the founding story will dictate how it starts. So why don't we do that? Yeah.
All right, perfect. So real briefly, you mentioned that you went to Cal. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in Pasadena, California. I see some people who are local. My mom's dream was for me to stay in Pasadena, go to Caltech so I could live at home and stay at home. So I did not want that, of course. So LA schools are out of the equation, so I did not try to go to UCLA or USC. Went to Cal, go Bears. And I've been back a few times to the SC campus, mostly on the opposing football field side, but I've always liked the SC campus.
You're part of the family now. You're welcome anytime. Any entrepreneurial sort of seedlings when you were a kid, or were you sort of just good student, straight student, all that?
I was, being the only kid from an immigrant family, I was a reasonably good student, but I did not like listening to my parents, as you can tell, where my parents wanted me to stay in LA and I wanted to be in somewhere else, not LA, so that I could kind of grow. I was very independent, I would say. And it kind of showed. I'll skip forward to one funny story. When we were raising our seed round for Grow With Us, and we'll talk about that later, this one investor, he was just asking me about my childhood like you did now. And when I said, I quit my job to go start to do startups, the only question he asked, and he he was like, were your parents really upset at you when you quit your corporate job? And I was like, oh, my dad was so mad at me because it was a high-paying, great corporate job, and I quit to go kind of figure out life. We didn't have an idea. We'll talk about that. And so the investor was like, all right, I'm investing, right? Because he liked the fact that I was not subservient to anyone. I was like trying to forge my own path. And literally right after that question, he wrote me a $150,000 check. So.
It's good insight into somebody. You know, are you pleasing others, or are you doing something that you believe in? And it's a hard thing to do. So what did you major in at Cal?
I was, given that we are in the building right now, I was a computer science major. I think it was, you know, back then computer science wasn't as prevalent as it is now, where I took a class in high school, like an AP computer science class. Was the first year it was offered. I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. I get to manipulate a computer rather than kind of deal with people or whatever. So I was like, I'm in. So I did computer science, and it was very fortuitous that I was majored in computer science for sure.
And you and your partner met at Cal.
Yep.
What did he major in?
He majored in political economics. We actually, I met him through one of my friends. We weren't best of friends at college or anything like that. We just bonded over playing basketball, just on the basketball court, bonded over basketball shoes and just talked about it. And it was just a nice casual friendship. We went our separate ways after college. I stayed in San Francisco. I did Deloitte Consulting. And then my co-founder came back to LA. He's from LA, and he started to do startup stuff. He was at Edmunds.com, back at the car comparison website, back when Edmunds was a good property. And so basically I was at consulting. I just never liked being kind of a cog in a wheel, and I was just never passionate about my job. So I thought, hey, what's more interesting than consulting? I was like, investment banking, right? Like, might as well. So I started to work the channels, and I got a job at Lehman Brothers when it still existed, RIP. And so the job was actually in LA.
Really?
So I moved back to LA, and I needed a roommate. So I was asking all my friends who needed a roommate, and Daishin, my co-founder, was like, I need a roommate. So we decided to live together, and that's how our budding friendship started to blossom from that point forward. Funny story about investment banks. I think times have changed right now, but I was a computer science major, and they were like, oh, Lehman was like, you're a tech guy. Okay, why don't you cover semiconductors, right? And for the ones who know about technology, like, computer science is all software. We know nothing about semiconductors. It might as well be an econ major trying to do semiconductors.
Right.
But since I was a tech guy, I was like, okay, I'm going to cover semis. And so that's what happened. I covered semis for Lehman Brothers when it still existed. And I thought it would be just I would be more passionate about it, right? Turns out I was completely wrong. And there's more prestige in working at an investment bank for sure. You get to, we took CEOs around, we got to engage with them, but I was still not passionate about the work, and constantly I was trying to figure out what the next thing was. What's funny about it was, I'll skip back to Deloitte. You get rated on a 1 to 5 scale. I think some of you have been in corporate America. 1 being the best, 5 being the worst, and I would consistently get 3s, right? And this is from like a high achieving kid. And my boss, bless his heart, he was like, we're gonna try to get you to a 2. Like, it's, that's my mission. And I was like, honestly, don't even bother. I don't care, because all I did was I just did the bare minimum to get through consulting, because I was just working on other stuff on the side. And that's when I kind of realized that it just like, corporate life wasn't really for me. It just like was not providing the passion that it did. Like right when I got home was when I started to become passionate about doing stuff. So I spared him. I was like, I just want 3s. Like don't even worry about it. I'm not the model employee, so please, if you go into corporate America, do not listen to anything I'm saying.
It worked. But I've heard people say that in retrospect. Paul Orfalea, like when you're in school, like, if you don't want to get the A, if you don't care, like enjoy it, make the most of it, meet the most people, and move on to what you're what you want to do, whether it's a job, whether it's an internship. So it's interesting to hear that from you. I don't know how you continue to keep that job when you told, usually most people fake it and tell their boss like, oh, I really want to be a number 1. I really, you at least got to play that game. But for you to just say, I'm good.
We had a good relationship.
That's good to have too. So that's Lehman Brothers for those of you that were following the news in 2007 and 2008. I mean, that was sort of the precipice. 2008 was the precipice of the financial meltdown in the markets in 2008. And you had left before that.
When I was at Lehman, the stock was at its all-time high. Right when I left in 2007, the fall started. So
there's the connection.
There's only one reason for the whole financial crisis, and I think you are sitting next to it right now.
Yeah. That's the answer to the trivia question. What caused the fall of Lehman Brothers?
Yeah.
Although you don't want to be the answer to
I
that,
know,
actually.
that's true. But yeah, I mean, we quit cold turkey in 2007. Like, my co-founder and I, we would work hard all day long, and we would go back home and try to figure out a business idea. Startups didn't even exist back then, the concept of a startup. It was, hey, let's go start a business together. But working demanding jobs, there's just like no way you could dedicate your time to creating a startup. So we actually decided to quit cold turkey on the same day without an idea. Like, we ruminated and tried a few things, but like, we were just like, let's just quit and like figure it out. Because, we had a small savings from working a few years in corporate America, and we were just like, hey, what's the worst that'll happen? We'll just go back and get some jobs, right? So, I think we're like, I don't know, 25-ish at the time, and we like decided to quit. And it wasn't easy, but thankfully that was right when the iPhone came out. The iPhone's ubiquitous right now, but the iPhone came out in 2007, and that's when the App Store first launched. And given that I was a developer and my co-founder was very into design, we were just like, hey, why don't you do the front end, I'll do the back end, and let's just create iPhone apps. This is just this new device. I'm sure none of you know what a BlackBerry is, but I was a big BlackBerry guy coming from investment banking, and he just got an iPhone. He was like, this is amazing. We have to create apps for this. I was very skeptical. We would have typing contests because I was so certain I could type faster with a BlackBerry than he could with an iPhone. But anyway, sidebar. But we started to develop these iPhone apps, and it was just high volume, low quality apps. I mean, David, I think you remember, right when the iPhone came out, these 99-cent apps were so prevalent, and people would just download them because they were like, it was so novel that you could download an app onto your phone. So we created an app a week. That was just our cadence. We're like, let's just hardcore go and create an app a week. Any single thing under the sun we made. It was like, hey, it's Earth Day next week. Let's create an Earth Day app. It was like,
I remember the Earth Day app.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure
That's
you
a good
did.
one.
We created a basketball game. We created, one of my favorite games was this one called Seagulls, where you had different birds fly above you, and there's like, you had this dude, and you used the accelerometer to go left and right, and you had to dodge the different types of poop that the birds would, and it wasn't just straight. It was like heat-seeking poop. It was poop that would break apart. We used a lot of physics, to be honest, in that game. But it was like just games like that we just kept pumping out, and that's how we made a living. That it just kind of like nurtured our startup understanding and our mobile platform development understanding through kind of just making these low-quality, high-volume apps. So that's how we started. We made a little money from that. We knew it wasn't going to be sustainable, so we were like, hey, let's create some passive income streams. And we decided to put money into a franchise. And this was has anyone had Beard Papas? It's like this cream puff franchise. Okay, a few people have. Don't ever buy a Beard Papa. Or I'll explain to you the story. But we basically said, let's create some passive income for ourselves, and we will start franchising these and just hire managers to run our cream puff stores for us. So our first store was actually in Arcadia. We ended up opening a few stores in LA and in Chicago. And this was in 2008-ish. Of course, the financial crisis hit. And these passive income streams went from, just like managing the cash and the books on a few hours a week basis to like us actively working the store every single day, us pumping your cream puffs, us ringing the register, sweeping the floors, because we could not afford to hire any managers anymore. And it was one of the toughest times we've ever had. I mean, we were so overextended with debt because, as you know, with these stores, you have to do a big upfront capital investment to open up a store. You have to remodel, you have to do all this stuff. And then it doesn't grow exponentially like an online business or a tech company where you have a set amount of engineers and you can run with it. These are physical stores that can only produce X amount of dollars. And so we were in the hole. It was tough. We learned a lot about each other. This is when times are tough. That's when you know if you have a co-founder for life or not. I remember this one day we had a disagreement, and we went to the basketball court to go play a game of pickup basketball with our friends. And for some reason, we got split up on different teams, and for some reason, we were assigned to guard each other. And after you've been so frustrated with things not working, like things got pretty physical. And he would drive down the lane, I would bump him and get more physical. And eventually, we just started to push each other and throw each other on the ground. And our friends were so scared because they were like, why are these guys just doing this? And they separated us, and it was crazy because it was so heated, but we had to get our emotions out. But the game stopped, obviously, because no one wanted to play with us anymore. But the sad part is that we drove to the basketball court together, right? So we had to go back to the office together, and we sat in the car, and we literally just looked at each other, we fist bumped each other, and we're just like, ready to go back to work? Yep, all right, let's go, right? It's honestly that type of thing. I've seen so many startups implode because of co-founder dynamics. You have to understand, we've lost a couple co-founders through our various business ventures, and Daisha and I are the only ones who have stuck together because we're just resilient, and we just understand that we're gonna have differences, we're gonna have issues, but how can we resolve them quickly and just understand the bigger picture and mission? And so we went through Y Combinator, a third of the startups failed right after YC because just co-founder issues, someone wanted to be CEO, the other person wanted to be CEO as well, or they couldn't agree on an equity split or whatever. It's just all that stuff doesn't even matter. It's just let's work together, let's figure it out. Can we build a big business together because we know we're gonna not agree all the time? So it was a big learning lesson. The whole Beard Papa thing was just so tough. We were in so much debt after that experience.
Personally, you had to sign that, yeah?
Personally. I mean, we signed big retail leases.
You were the franchisor?
Yeah.
You were trying to get franchisee?
We're the franchisee. We're
okay,
the franchisee.
So
we had a store at the Americana here. We had, that is not a place you want to mess with when your business goes bad, right? Places like that. You sign basically, and you have to owe money. So we made sure we paid every single dollar back over time, but we were in so much debt. But it taught us so much about business, about managing employees, about shrinking staff when times are tough, about understanding each other and how we can work. So that was, I'm going to keep going if...
No,
okay,
I'll jump in.
Okay.
So some important things, I don't know if anyone's family has franchises. It's one of those things where if you're the franchisor, it can work. Franchisee, typically you are signing up to have yourself a job. They want people that are going to work their ass off for $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. And if you can build 20 of them or 30 of them, you can build a great life, as they were trying to do. Exactly. That was the goal. But if you're in there every day, you're truly probably not going to be able to maximize, the other things you can do in life. It's a tough road. And then when small business, so everyone thinks, oh, start again. Well, if you in the beginning you don't have any assets, you're probably going to have to sign personally, which means you personally guarantee the debts of the business, and that changes the dynamic of your life.
It does.
It's someone can take your business away. You're like, okay, I'll start again. Not if you've personally guaranteed it. They'll come after you, particularly if you've got anything. When you're young, my first business, I signed anything they put in front of me because I had nothing, right? Who cares? What are you going to do? Take my student loans? You have no assets. Then all of a sudden it continues. Your business starts growing. You've still signed on that dotted line. All of a sudden you have a house and other assets. You got to be very careful about this stuff to protect it. So great lesson there. Talk to us about Grub with Us.
Yeah.
Because this is a concept that seems like it should work. And sometimes you may just have an idea that works, or you think it works, and the timing's not right, or the product market fit's not right. Tell us about Grub with Us.
This happened because of Beard Papa. We opened a Beard Papa in Chicago, and we realized we didn't have any friends in Chicago. And we were like, hey, why don't we solve it with technology? So basically, Grub with Us was a group dining app. And what happened was, let's pretend there was a sneaker meal on the site. You would book an individual ticket, pay on the site, let's say you're $40, $50 for the meal, and join a group dinner at a restaurant with other people who are into sneakers. So that was the concept of Grub with Us. It was a super low pressure way to meet new people, make new friends, to network, to date, whatever. Actually, a bunch of weddings came out of Grub with Us, speaking of the dating apps out there. But it was a great idea in theory because, yeah, low pressure way. I am new to a city, or I want to meet new people. I need to eat anyway, so might as well go. But it's basically a marketplace where you're combining people with restaurants, with events. And the thing that kills marketplaces is friction. Like, Goat is a we would try to reduce as much friction as possible to make that marketplace work, and I'll talk about some of that. But with Grub With Us, think about all the friction points to doing this meal. Okay, I'm going to a meal today. What if I'm vegan and there's no vegan options on the menu? What if the menu's too expensive? What if the restaurant's too far? What if I've had a bad experience at the restaurant? What if I go and it's all dudes? What if it's all girls? What if I'm the only one that shows up? What if I'm the first one that showed up? What if I'm busy that day? You're thinking about 20 different things before you even click buy. And while it was a great idea in theory and we had some scale, it was not going to be an explosive idea because the friction was too much. And worst of all, what if I'm just too scared to go? I'm scared to meet new people. So we slogged through the idea. We tried to reduce all the friction points. We even created an app called Grub Tonight, which we were like, okay, at least if you know you're not busy tonight, here's a prefix meal where you can go and sign up and go eat with other people. But even then, people were still scared. People didn't know what was going to happen. Dealing with small, medium businesses, as we all know, it's a very inconsistent experience. So it was just not going to scale. And so after throwing all we had at it, we did Y Combinator with this idea. We raised $7 million for this idea. And we told our investors, honestly, it's not going to work. We need a pivot. And so we decided to pivot.
So how much did you have of the $7 million? How much did you have left?
We had a couple $1 million at that point, probably 2.5-ish, let's say. But we didn't pivot right from that to GOAT. Right. There was a lot of struggle throughout probably a little over a year until we did GOAT. The worst thing y'all can do, I mean, let's just be honest. Things are gonna, we all have startup ideas. Most of them aren't gonna work. And so I think the thing we did that was not right, or I mean, I guess just not the best mindset, was the fact that we were like, hey, we have all this IP from Grub With Us. We have restaurant data. We have user preferences. We have just this kind of local ecosystem of knowledge. Why don't we create a startup that uses all that, but in a different way? And the problem with that thinking is because we're just kind of like trying to save face. We're saying, this isn't gonna work, but we're sure this next thing is gonna work. But if you asked me at that point, hey, are you passionate about working on this new concept that you had? And do you think it's gonna succeed? The real answer would have been no, because it was like, hey, we're just trying to make something work rather than us being super passionate about this new idea. And so it completely failed because none of the team was passionate about it. It was just like, hey, let's cobble the stuff together that we have. And I see a lot of startup founders actually do this mistake. And YC founders, when they reach out to me and they're like, hey, I'm pivoting during YC, I'm gonna do this. And I literally ask them that exact question every single time. If you were to start from scratch today, is this the idea that you would pick? Because chances are it's usually no, where it's just like, I'm pivoting, I need to pick something in the realm. So after that, we said, all right, let's just completely blank slate, let's figure it out.
But you go back to your investors and you say, look, this isn't working. You probably looked at data, the cost to acquire customers with Grub With Us and retention and all that stuff. You're looking at an online business and it's not working. Mm-hmm. And you have an honest conversation with your investors. And what do you tell them that this, whatever the latest iteration is not working. How do they respond? Do some people say, well, okay, we'll just take our money back?
It's tough. Some investors wanted us to get Aqua Hired so that they could call it a win and say, hey.
Tell them what an Aqua Hire is.
So an Aqua Hire is when basically you get acquired by a company, but for very little money. You don't see much of any proceeds. You might get a bonus from this acquiring company, but let's pretend like Grub With Us was going to get Aqua Hired by Facebook. And Facebook would say, okay, you've raised $7 million. I'm going to give you $1 million to return a little bit of money to the investors. You'll maybe get a bonus for working here. But that's about it. And you can say you got acquired by Facebook, right? So that you can put it on your resume.
Acquisition to hire.
Yeah.
So they're trying to hire him and the development team.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
And so some investors wanted us to do that because they were just like, all right, clearly you guys kind of need a reset. Some investors wanted us to return the money. I don't know if it was stubbornness or stupidity, but Daisha and I were just like, no, we're going to figure this freaking thing out. Like, we are, why would we want to be middle manager at Pinterest or wherever? Like, let's keep going, and we don't care. Like, it was kind of that stubbornness and resilience that got us to where we were, and we're just like, we're going to keep going. The one piece of advice I would give everyone here is you will get pressure from your investors for things like this, but realize that investors are big boys and girls. They write checks for a living. You are, honestly, you are part of their artillery. The fact if you use up all the money or get Aqua Hire isn't going to change their P&L any meaningful way. So I've always understood that, hey, you're big boys and girls, you gave us the money, we're going to use the money. If we really feel like we've been burnt out or et cetera, we will return the money. But to the extent that we still want to keep going, we're going to keep going. So.
Okay, so tell us about how that pivot is almost too generous of a word, because you guys just, reinvented the concept. And, where did the concept come from? And then was there one particular investor who understood the vision?
So this is when it goes back to the Daishin, the founding story, where Daishin, he has been a lifelong sneaker enthusiast. His first pair of Jordans were when he was 10 years old, the Jordan 5 Grapes, the fifth version of the Jordan in the grape colorway. And his dad bought him a pair of these Jordan 5 Grapes when he got good grades in school. And posters on the wall went from Marty McFly to Michael Jordan overnight. And Marty McFly is, of course, from Back to the Future for everyone's reference. And he's just been a lifelong sneaker enthusiast ever since. So Nike does this thing where they retro shoes or re-release shoes every once in a while. They retro a lot of the Jordan ones and all that stuff, but they actually retroed the Jordan 5 Grapes 23 years later, Michael Jordan's number 23. And so this was in 2013, 2014, and Daishin, being that those were his first pair of Jordans ever, he was super nostalgic about them and he had to have them. So he went on the largest sneaker marketplace at the time, eBay, to go buy a pair. Sifted through all the reviews, listings. He knows what he's doing, so he bought a pair. He got them, turned out to be fake. And so he was so upset. I mean, we were still poor back then, just FYI, right? Because we were still in debt. And we were just like, how come in this day and age, we're spending hundreds of dollars on something like sneakers and we still have to worry if it's real or fake? Like, why hasn't someone solved this problem? So since we were pivoting anyway, we were just like, why don't we build a marketplace based on trust and safety and start with the sneaker category, because we have domain expertise there. And it's a huge problem. Nike's like the most counterfeit brand in the world. So we said, let's just go attack this problem. Of course, our investors, that was the one thing. We were like, we don't know if our investors would be into this idea. So I actually emailed a lot of our investors to tell them that we were going to pivot. And I offered some of them their money back. I offered First Round Capital their money back. I know we have share mutual investors there. And a lot of the investors were like, whoa, big pivot from dining to sneakers. But at this point, I don't know, we had $1.5 million left. They were going to get back pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So
nothing.
They were just like, you know what? It's worth more to you at this point than it is to us. Just keep the money. So no one wanted their money back. And then the thing that gave us a lot of confidence is that Greg Bentinelli from Upfront Ventures, he was on our board. He led our Series A and Grub with us. He used to work at eBay. So when we told him this idea, he was just like, you know what? There are a lot of categories on eBay that are declining right now. I mean, let's talk about trading cards, or talk about stamps, or other verticals. He was like, sneakers are actually one of the categories that's increasing. He was like, so if you guys, what he did was he made us take him to a sneaker shop to make sure we knew what we were talking about. Right. But he was like, if you guys have the domain expertise, I know you guys can build the apps. You guys have a great tech team. But yeah, if this is something that you're passionate about, let's go ahead and do it. So we went to the sneaker shop, so we passed apparently, and then we started building Goat.
That's fantastic. I mean, before we go, I want to spend most of the time on Goat here, but let's talk about setbacks and sort of your philosophy on that. You had, I don't know how many apps. You had Grub with us. I think you did an import-export business. So you've had a bunch of things that didn't go as well as you wanted them to go, and yet you still kept sort of punching it out. What does it take to be just an entrepreneur, but what kind of stomach do you need, and what kind of short memory do you need?
So resilience is one of our core values at the company, and we've talked about that a lot, but the reason why it's so important is you're going to have bad days, you're going to have bad months, bad weeks, bad quarters. Like, if you get punched, how can you get back up and punch harder right back to me, right? Like, that's the type of people we look for, and it's just because that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. There is so much crap, to be honest, that happens on a daily basis, with a startup. At this scale especially, like, there's A ton of stuff. And I've had a lot of friends who've tried to quit their jobs to become entrepreneurs. And I honestly tell them, like, honestly, you probably don't have what's in it to become an entrepreneur, because you can't deal with a lot of, and it's not a bad thing. Like, some people are just great at being an employee. I'm not. It was like by default that I had to be an entrepreneur because I'm not a great employee. So I just think, like, yeah, you have to be able to take the punches from the media, from your customers, from your investors, from your employees, whatever it is, and you just have to fight back that much harder. And it's not innate to everyone. And that's, for some weird reason, that's a skill that we have, but we don't have a lot of other skills, right? So it's just part
It doesn't
of our
mean
DNA.
you can't be part of a startup. It can mean that you might not be the founder with the idea. You can join a company that's already sort of moving and be part of that and get a paycheck. You'll get a little bit of equity or something on, or a lot of it. I'm sure the 100 person that joined Facebook did pretty well, right? So you don't have to be number one or number two. I just don't want everyone to feel like I'm either an entrepreneur or I can't participate. You can. So that's great advice. So tell us about sort of the founding of GOAT, and I want you to transition into why Black Friday has always meant something to you.
Oh, and I need to tell you how GOAT works. So basically, because trust and safety was the core of what we do, David, when you buy something on GOAT, the seller doesn't ship it to you directly like what they would do on eBay. They actually ship it to one of our distribution centers for us to authenticate and quality check the product before we send it. We repackage the product and then we send it to you so that you get a consistent buyer-like experience. We deal with all the messy marketplace issues. I was talking about marketplace friction. When you buy something on eBay, I think many of us have bought stuff on an eBay-like marketplace. Let's say you want to buy this pair of bodegas size 10, you might have to sift through 100 different listings because 100 different sellers are selling that same exact shoe. And you have to look at their photo set, look at their price, look at how many stars they have, how many comments they have, how fast they ship. And it might take you 2 hours to buy a pair of shoes. Rather than on GOAT, we've consolidated everything into a SKU-based system. So sellers actually compete against each other on price. The price that you see on GOAT is actually the lowest price seller. So if you're listing something for $200 and I'm a seller, I want to sell that same exact size and SKU, I have to list it for a lower price than yours for mine to sell. So sellers compete against each other on one listing so that the price goes down to the market clearing price. And as a buyer, you're just like, I like that shoe, I like that price, I'm gonna click buy. It takes you 5 seconds to buy versus on eBay where you have to spend potentially hours to buy. And that's why we've tried to reduce the friction from the marketplace so it's so easy for the buyer and the seller to transact. And that's why it's really helped us grow as a business. So that was kind of the first insight we did when we started GOAT. Like, because of all the pains we had with Grub With Us, we were like, let's reduce that marketplace friction to the bare minimum. And so that was the start.
It's interesting that you say that because people just accept, maybe not as much now, but eBay was just so dominant in everything, and eBay's probably, PayPal and tickets are probably still their biggest things where, people are reluctant to take on a giant like that. But to see, now that you pointed out, eBay's miserable to you. It's not a fun experience. It takes a ton of time to find stuff and compare it, and then, it's gone or, whatever it is. So it's interesting to think that just because there's a dominant player or two, that there's not an area for you to sort of focus on a niche, which you did. And so tell us about the starting of GOAT, and if you can sort of share some of the first stories, the ups, the downs, but the Black Friday story just is really one that resonates.
So it was a struggle for a long time. Like, no one should pretend that GOAT was a success overnight. It was absolutely not that. We launched on TechCrunch, I remember, in July of 2015, and we got 20 sales that first day, and we were so excited. We were like, yes, we have a market. And we didn't understand how much fraud there was in the industry back then. So fast forward 20 days later, half of those sales were chargebacks on to our account because it was a fraudulent purchaser who used a stolen credit card to buy those, right? So we went from excited to demoralized in the span of a couple of weeks, and it was just crazy. I remember so we launched in July. There was a day in late September. It was 6 p.m. We were all still at work. We didn't have one sale the whole entire day, right? It was like crickets. And I had to go in and buy a pair of shoes secretly myself so I could tell the team that we sold something that day. It was brutal still. So it's tough. Honestly, that's why I'm saying it takes a lot of resilience to get there. this other hack that we did was, with marketplaces, there's always a chicken and egg thing. If you don't have buyers, there are no sellers who are going to list stuff on your platform. If you don't have sellers, there's nothing for buyers to buy. So you always have to solve this chicken and egg problem. So early on, this was before you didn't see any seller photos on our app. Very early on, we were like, hey, let's solve this chicken and egg problem. So when you look on eBay and people are selling their sneakers, they always put it on this carpet or something, and then they take a picture of it, and then their seller puts it on their tile or whatever. And so what we did was we're like, we have to hack one side of the equation, either the seller or the buyer. So we said, all right, let's hack the seller side. We didn't have much money left, but we said, let's buy up 100 pairs of different kinds of shoes. And what we did was, in order to pretend like we had a robust seller network, we went to Home Depot and bought like 1 foot by 1 foot samples of a lot of different carpets and a lot of different tiles. And we took the same shoe, but we took it 30 different times on the different linoleum floors and different carpets to pretend like our seller base was robust and like these people had these crazy carpeted homes and everything. But it was literally just us manually taking photo by photo by photo to pretend like we had people,
That's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so it was tough, right? Okay, so now Black Friday. Like we started to get a little bit of traction, October-ish, November-ish. Black Friday of 2015 was a day when our head of marketing came to me and was like, hey, Eddy, let's do something for Black Friday. And I was like, sure, do whatever you want. No one's gonna freaking see it anyway, right? Just like do whatever. So he was like, why don't we discount all the hottest styles of the year to retail price? This was the year of the Pirate Black Yeezys, the Supreme Jordan 5s, some of the pretty iconic sneakers now. And they were going for maybe $400 to $500 on our site. Retail is about $200. So we were like, all right, we're gonna take a hit on like 100 pairs of shoes to do this promotion where we discount it to retail price, right? So we, a week before Black Friday, we launched this promotion, and we told the media, not expecting anything, but every single influential blog in our industry picked up on this story. We're talking about Hypebeast, Soul Collector, High Stability, Sneaker News, all these places where they're like, this app is selling Yeezys at retail, the biggest restock of the year, like crazy sensational headlines where we had like a couple hundred shoes to sell. And it was crazy because so many people started joining our app that week before Black Friday. We gained 100,000 users that day when we saw maybe like, I don't know, users in the tens on a daily active user before that. And it crashed our site every single day up until Black Friday because for the engineers in the room, like we didn't optimize any queries, we didn't cache any pages or anything like that. So the experience was super slow and super bad when you had scale. And so imagine when you have 100,000 people sign up and they think there's thousands of shoes, it's a restock, and 100,000 people enter your app that same exact second on Black Friday. Like chaos ensued. I took a screenshot and I favorited it on my phone of the Instagram comments that we got that day. We got like thousands upon thousands of comments, like one a second. It is like some of the nastiest comments you'll ever see. Happy to show you later. It is some of them were personal attacks. It was crazy, but happy to share that. But that day of Black Friday, it was crazy. Like obviously people were so mad at us. It was 4 p.m. We didn't sleep the night before because we were trying to fix everything. Nothing was working. One of our investors called us at 4 p.m. We didn't eat yet and everything, and he said, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "No, nothing's okay. Things are melting, things are going wrong." And but he said something that I'll always remember. He said, "At your stage of your company's life, it's better to be hated than unknown." And looking back, I would have done this experience 1,000 times over because this is the day that put us on the map. It was our true inflection point. People hated us, but they understood the value proposition. They were like, "Oh, but I get it. This company authenticates my product so that I don't get fakes. I got it." So then they started to see what the potential of Go was, and literally we never turned back from that day on. So it was, yeah.
And you did something else interesting. So you had, you obviously didn't have the product to fulfill all the orders,
Yeah.
right? So you had a lot of people that are not happy with you on top of the technical malfunction of the site. What did you do to each one of those individual buyers? Did you contact each one?
Well, it was a first come first serve thing. So a lot of people obviously didn't get it, but some people got it because it was.
But on the
first come,
comments,
first serve.
did you write back to them? Did you respond?
Our team responded to every single customer service message. We probably had 4,000 that day when we just said apologies, etc. The problem was in the press, we promised a Black Friday campaign and a Cyber Monday campaign. So we had to like do this all over again. But luckily, we turned that campaign into a raffle because we were like, the good thing is we got another set of press because since we turned it into a raffle, all the blogs had to write about us again. They're like, oh, Coat's turning the Cyber Monday campaign into a raffle. We do things completely above board as a company now, but I would just say for that Cyber Monday campaign, some of our biggest haters on social media magically won. I don't know how, but some of them magically won, and they became our biggest supporters after that because if you delight an angry customer, they'll shout from the rooftops from you. So that happened.
That's a huge lesson, by the way. Like, you're going to have, maybe not to this scale and this visibility, you're going to have a lot of setbacks. You've already sort of experienced some. And it's how you deal with that, and not just internally, but it's how you respond to a customer. We had a really, in our business, we had a really bad injury at an oil refinery. And we're at risk of losing our largest customer. I don't say overreacted, but we sent in a medical team. We sent so much in there that they're, wow, you really responded. I've seen that so many times in my career where if you really go over above for somebody, they'll stick with you.
Yep.
And maybe you'll even build a better relationship than you had before. So that says a lot about that. So give us the ramp up of sort of how subscription or memberships have sort of risen from that point forward. And now we're 4 years later?
For sure. How much time do we have left right now?
We have, I'd say 10, 15 minutes, then I want to give them questions.
Cool. I want to say one other story because I think it's relevant to the hustle of being an entrepreneur. This was early in 2016, and we started to see a bunch of big purchases, like $1,000 purchase, a $2,000 purchase, and usually that hits our fraud rate. We're like, oh, okay, this is definitely fraud. But we looked at the email addresses, and it was jack@twitter.com and adam@twitter.com. So it's Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, and Adam Bain, who was the COO of Twitter at the time. And we were like, oh my God, it's probably fraud, but it'd be amazing if these luminaries were buying from Goat. And so I emailed them and I said, hey, big fans. This was mostly a fraud check. I was like, big fans, please let us know if you have any issues. And Adam wrote back and he was like, oh, hey, thanks so much. We love the service. I actually can't find this pair of Yeezys. You guys don't have this on your site, right? So what being scrappy entrepreneurs, what we did is we scoured the internet for this pair of shoes. It was like a specific pair of Yeezys in his size. Scoured the internet. We found it. We bought it personally, and we posted on our site. And we told Adam, hey, Adam, a seller magically has this size and SKU. Magically, right after you asked, you just happened to be posting the shoe. And he bought it right away. He was like, amazing. Hey, next time you're in SF, come by to Twitter. Would love to hang out. And we bought tickets that next day, and we were like, hey, we have a flight next week, actually.
Just so happened.
We can hand deliver these shoes to you. And he was like, sure, why not? So we went to Twitter, hand delivered the shoes. We kept a relationship. He became a board member of ours. He's one of our best board members that we have. And it was just because we hustled. And it's funny, I never told him that story until about 6 months ago, and he was just cracking up because he had no clue what we were doing on the background. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's important to build these relationships and find someone who already understands your product and your service. How do you authenticate? Is it manually? I mean, you got to think about, like you talked about, the difficulty of scaling locations. If you have a lot of manual labor involved in the authentication process, and that's difficult to scale as well.
Goat prides itself at being the best at authentication, and we know we are in the industry, and a few competitors and people in the industry have had issues with authentication, but because it's part of our DNA, we want to have the best in class authentication. We've built learning management systems where we can train people. Like for authenticators, as long as you're super detail oriented and super diligent and you have a passion for sneakers, we can train you to become an authenticator. I mean, we joke that the best authenticators are sneakerheads who are accountants, right? Because they're so detail oriented and diligent. But you can't authenticate with sight alone. There's tools out there that they claim that you can just use image recognition and capturing. We use a lot of technology, and we use a combination of machine learning and AI to help assist our authenticators with spotting fakes, but we don't pretend you can do 100% of the shoes with technology. We help assist a good amount, and we're going to increase that over time with our data science team. But it's for the good fakes, it's not just sight, it's touch, it's feel, it's smell. Smell is such an important part of the authentication process because the glue that Nike uses, the fabric that Nike uses, it's kind of that new car smell. When you get into a new car, you get that same repeating new car smell. These fake factories use a different kind of glue, to use different material, and it just smells synthetic and much different than like that Nike smell that you get that when you smell a brand new Nike shoe. So our authenticators are very good at what they do.
And do you offer, if for some reason it's not, have you ever had the situation where it's a fake shoe and you have to refund the customer?
Very, very few times it happens. We've prevented $72 million of fakes last year, and this is up from like 35 million the year before. So there's a ton of inauthentic product that tries to flow through our systems, but we catch them.
So a lot of other businesses, if you decided to go in different directions, I know I'm not going to talk about, but seriously, everyone, any luxury brand has that issue.
Exactly.
Well, before I give it to them, I read some highlights in 2019. Talk about some of the partnerships that you've created with the Brooklyn Nets, with, was it Chloe, I think you have one, and Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah. So Kyle was our first ever GOAT athlete, and this was a very cool moment for us. Being from LA, we've lifelong dreamed to work with the Lakers, of course. And so Kyle, he's just very into fashion and sneakers. And we said, hey, Kyle, you would be the perfect person to be our very first GOAT athlete. And it's, really paid off in spades because we were the first kind of resale marketplace to ever partner and sponsor an NBA player. And it gets referenced so often. Recently, we just did a deal with Rui Hachimura of the Washington Wizards, and the same exact thing. He actually really loved the GOAT brand, wanted to be a part of the GOAT family, and so we worked, he's a Jordan Brand athlete, so we worked in conjunction with Jordan Brand to make this happen, to say, okay, Rui is our second GOAT athlete. And then we always want to do innovative things like this. With the Brooklyn Nets, what we did was we sponsored the entrance walkway to the Brooklyn Nets for the players. So their player arrival tunnel, there's GOAT branding and signage everywhere. And when we approached the Brooklyn Nets to do this, we were like, hey, we want to sponsor your tunnel. They were like, okay, no one's ever asked us to do this, so sure, why not? Just put everything. But what we realized is that the first 5 seconds of every ESPN clip, you see the players walk into an arena with their streetwear, with their sneakers. And so we wanted to capitalize on that by having GOAT branding there so that whenever ESPN's panning with these employees or these players, they see the GOAT logo, right? And this was a very low-cost thing for us because no one's ever wanted to brand the arena, the entrance walkway. And I don't know if some of you follow LeBron James' Instagram, but he literally a few weeks ago posted a picture of himself walking into the Brooklyn Nets arena with the GOAT logo next to him. And this is not something we paid him to do. This is something just organic that he wanted to do. And it was it's that type of stuff where we think of innovative ways to market that really help us reduce our marketing costs. Because if you're all building consumer companies, customer acquisition cost is one of the biggest things investors ask about. If you can lower your CACs, that's how you build a sustainable business. And we've spent a lot of time building our brand, the GOAT brand, as opposed to a transactional marketplace like an eBay where there's no real brand. You don't associate yourself with that. With GOAT, we've built our brand and built this halo effect so that we can get a lot of brand marketing, a lot of free brand marketing so that CACs can go down.
When did that, now that you pointed out, every time you watch a highlight now, basketball highlight, it starts with, before the game, LeBron James or a star walking in there in their street clothes, what they're wearing. Yeah. And that probably wasn't competitive for you to buy that. It's brilliant. Do we have a microphone for the students? I want to maximize their time to ask questions because I just know how popular this is going to be.
Hi, my name's Ash. My best friend is a huge GOAT fan. He just sold a pair of shoes for 1.7K.
Nice. Congrats.
So I'm basically asking his questions.
Yep.
The first one is, what is your all-time favorite shoe? And the second question is, do you have any tips for starting from scratch in the fashion business or clothing lines?
All-time favorite sneakers. So we have this program called GOAT Clean where we take used sneakers and we actually completely refurbished them. We're not talking about just cleaning the outside, but we are talking about deodorizing the inside, taking off the laces, washing the laces, taking the gum off the sole, etc. And it's literally like you're buying a new shoe because it smells new, it looks new, etc. There's a lot of iconic shoes I've always wanted throughout time, and they're still really expensive, but like through the Goat Clean program, I've been able to pick up a few shoes that I've always wanted, and one of them is the Tom Sachs Mars Yard. So basically, Tom Sachs is an American artist. He created this Mars expedition exhibit, and in conjunction with Nike, he created the Mars Yard sneaker, and I just had to have them. So I waited until it was available on Goat Clean, and I bought them. So I didn't have to pay the full, like now these sneakers go for like $5,000-$6,000 new. I bought it for a fraction of that on the Goat Clean program, and that's one of my favorite sneakers. Your second question, in terms of starting from scratch, we started from scratch, right? It can be done. I would say that for every idea that you guys look at, there's going to be 20 competitors already doing something similar. Even when we started Goat, there were competitors in the space, and we just had to go and see what they were doing, what they were doing differently than us. You have to have an angle. Like us trying to compete against eBay and becoming eBay 2.0 wouldn't have happened if we didn't innovate and said, hey, we're going to authenticate everything, we're going to change the process, we're going to package it so that it's frictionless. So I would say if you want to break into the fashion space, it's not easy, but if you can find your angle, that'll help a lot.
Hi, my name's Steven, also a big sneakerhead. So I wanted to just get your opinion on one of you guys' biggest competitors being StockX. Like, what do you feel like GOAT differentiates like your brand from StockX, and what would you tell someone who's just getting into like sneakers why they should choose GOAT over StockX?
I can't speak for the competitors. I'll say what we do really well. For us, we call ourselves a global platform for style, and it's because we've spent time building our brand so that we have the permission now to go into not just sneakers, but apparel and other things that make you look and feel good. And I think that brand leverage will resonate over time with the people who care about style, and us being the kind of curator for your style, whether you like wearing Chucks or you like wearing Off-White or etc. We can really curate that style for you, and you can trust us with style versus a more transactional marketplace where our competitors they'll sell sneakers, toys, trading cards, etc. It's for me, it's not really part of the culture. It's really just trying to like trade and make a buck on different types of materials. So for me, I think if we can do, and we're continuously doing a great job at building our brand so that we can have a long-lasting brand to help people curate their style.
Hi, been a long time sneakerhead. Just have a few questions. I've noticed how the sneaker scene's slowly, I would say, like dying out. How do you think GOAT can revamp that, and where do you think the sneaker sort of movement is heading towards?
What's counterintuitive? People think that on GOAT you only buy limited edition high-value sneakers, and that's actually not the case. Over 40% of our sales are under retail price. We've just become the best place to buy sneakers, period. And it's because, think about going and walking into your local sneaker retail store. There might be 150 shoes at most on a wall, and that's stuff that hasn't sold out and only this year's styles. It's like, the stuff that isn't as desired is what's left at a sneaker store. Like, if a kid walks in and says, hey, let me see the Travis Scott Jordan 1s. A retail store is going to be like, sorry, we sold out of that a long time ago. Can I at least look at it? No, we don't have any stock, right? As opposed to GOAT, there's over 75,000 different styles that you can pick from right now. So we have a sneaker for every single individual. And it doesn't have to be an expensive sneaker. It's basically whatever fits your taste. And a very significant portion of our sales are under retail price. So you can buy that $50 pair of Chucks all the way up to the Nike mags, and we have something for everyone. So I would say, people need to wear sneakers out. Sneakers are a growing trend. It's much more acceptable in everyday life. I mean, 5 years ago when I go to these investor meetings and these like tech meetings, everyone would be wearing brown shoes, black shoes. Now, a lot of people are wearing sneakers to these things. It's just much more acceptable. So I would say maybe the super hype market, maybe there's pockets of hype, but in terms of the overall sneaker market, we see it continuously growing because sneakers are just so much more acceptable in everyday life now.
Thank you for being here tonight. My question is, do you believe that your experience working in consulting and investment banking allowed you to become more efficient in running and starting your own company? Or do you believe that you would have been able to achieve the same level of success in the same amount of time without that experience?
Every experience adds on to what you know and what you can learn from. I mean, I'm a tech guy, right? So understanding the financials is a very important part of my job right now, and pouring through financial statements and the management S1s and quarterly earnings reviews at Lehman Brothers really helped hone my finance skills, to be honest. So it's something that is part of my repertoire, right? Like, I don't have the design abilities like my co-founder. Thankfully, he does. We're very complementary to each other. But that's why, your experience will help hone who you are and what you can bring. Find people that complement the things that you lack, so that you can have an efficiently running business. But I think, for sure, Lehman helped me with the financials. For sure, consulting helped me with understanding how to think about strategy in terms of creating a long-lasting, long-term business.
Hi, I have a quick question about Foot Locker. Could you expand on how Foot Locker investment is going to help you guys, and whether or not, because I'm just skeptical that it's more like a backdoor deal for them, so that they can backdoor shoes into your app. So could you expand on that investment?
If big corporate companies, especially public companies, are very above board, very ethical. And I'm just being honest, they would never do anything that is unethical or something that is not part of, that's not okay with the industry as a whole. For Foot Locker and us, you can imagine, I mentioned the 3,000 locations. We have 3 physical retail stores with Flight Club, and we do GOAT drop-off there. So after you sell something, you can drop it off out on Fairfax or whatever. Imagine if we had 3,000 drop-off locations, how much easier it would be for our sellers to interact and drop things off, how much easier it'd be for buyers to go pick up stuff and at their local Foot Locker, how much easier it would be for us to do activations at their key markets. So there's a lot of, Foot Locker's biggest strength and moat is their physical retail stores, and we want to leverage that since we're a digital-only platform for the most part. That's the biggest unlock that we have with Foot Locker.
Okay, now it is. Big fan. I just impulsively bought 3 pairs of shoes on your app yesterday, so fun. My question is, why did you choose to include apparel in your app, and do you think it's doing as well as you want it to be doing? Because I feel like apparel isn't the reason I go on GOAT most of the time, so I just want to see why you made the choice to include that.
So for us, we don't think about it as extra verticals. We think about it as it completes the story, because it turns out you can't just wear sneakers on the street. You got to wear some clothing with it. What we can do a really good job at, and I talk about being the global platform for style, is we can say, hey, you bought this pair of off-whites from us a month ago. This is the apparel that would look really good to complete that outfit. Here's actually some images of people wearing the product with the off-whites that you purchased, and it just completes the story of the whole fit, and that's why we did it. It's something where we want to continue to tell the story of styling people over time, and apparel is a natural fit there.
Hi. Sorry. Also a huge GOAT fan. I got the sneakers I'm wearing right now on GOAT last year, so thank you for that. I was wondering how you guys keep fees acceptable for sellers while also providing so much value to the buyers.
Oh, I wonder that question every single day. Thank you very much. No, we want to make sure that what's funny is that we have dads come tell us all the time that, hey, my 13-year-old kid is learning about entrepreneurship. He's a mini entrepreneur now because of apps like GOAT, and he sells on GOAT, and he's learning the value of $1, etc. So we want to make sure that we can provide as much value as possible. I mean, our whole thing is if we can increase margins on our end, because we should be the most operationally efficient business possible, let's keep take rates the way they are for our sellers, but let's be operationally excellent on the back end in our warehouses, in our DCs. And if we can do that, then we can pass on the savings to these future entrepreneurs. We can pass on the savings to these buyers who are increasing their closet and getting much more into fashion. So that's our whole thing. It's a long-term game. I mean, we don't think about every single dollar. Even things when we have this augmented reality feature where you can try on shoes. We showcase shoes. A lot of times we showcase shoes that don't even exist. Like we it's shoes that you can't buy, but it's like iconic shoes in the sneaker industry, and it's because we think long-term. We're like, hey, this person might not be able to afford or can't even buy a $3,000 pair of shoes today, but they can play with it in augmented reality, and maybe in 5 years when they actually have disposable income, they'll be nostalgic about playing with it in AR, and then they'll be like, hey, now I can buy this pair of shoes because we've created a sneaker enthusiast going forward. So for us, it's about maximizing our customers' value, not about maximizing the dollar value of things.
Hi. Thanks so much for coming. Coming from a software background with the apps that you mentioned, what are the biggest difficulties and stuff that you learned dealing with the physical world and logistics from all across the country and world?
It is cross-border logistics is very hard. I mean, we ship to 164 different countries. Every country has its nuances on what they'll accept, what kind of tariffs they'll charge. I mean, some sneakers are crazy material, whether it's crocodile skin or some crazy leather or synthetics. Every country has their bans on certain types of imports, and you have to be really good at understanding those nuances because, this leather might be a 5% tariff, this leather might be an 8% tariff. Oh, Australia has a GST tax now that we have to include on everything. So it's constantly balancing that when you're dealing with the physical world and physical properties, when you're doing cross-border buying and selling. But that's saying that, since it's really hard, it's a massive opportunity. So anything that's hard, you should probably look into, double click on, because it's like, maybe this is where my business will succeed, right? The whole authentication thing, it's not easy to authenticate. It's not easy to be the best at authentication, but because it's hard, we're like, this is where we have our moat.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about applying to YC and how that's helped your company?
I think the times are a lot different now, but YC, we didn't know anyone in the investor space right now. Like, some of our investors are Ashton Kutcher, some of our investors are, luminaries in the tech scene, and it's because we did YC that we got access to the Ron Conways of the world, to the Ashton Kutchers of the world, et cetera. And it's been, like, we would not be where we were if we did not join. I think now things are a little different. There's a lot more access, a lot more incubators, but I would not have traded that experience for the world back in 2011, for sure. And I still recommend it now because it gives you a basis. I'll tell you one story of YC. We were so gung-ho. Safeway is this 24-hour store. I think some of you are from NorCal. 24-hour supermarket in SF. Daisha and I, Paul Graham's the founder of YC, and he was like the gatekeeper before you launched your company to TechCrunch and everywhere else. So we had this concept in our, this idea of Grub With Us where we're like, hey, let's create like a shopping cart system where you literally add this meal to your basket, and it's a checkout experience. And we coded it the whole night at Safeway to meet with him that afternoon. And he went over that and he tore the idea to shreds. And he was just like, this is the stupidest idea ever. No one shops like this. And so it really helps you kind of ground yourself on reality because he's seen it so many times. And what we did was we literally booked office hours the next day. We completely changed the UI, did another sleepless night. We went back to him and he was so upset. He was like, you guys again, like, why? I told you guys you're not launching because X, Y, and Z. And we're like, we fixed everything. And he was like, oh my goodness, okay, go for it. So I think Y Combinator helps you if you're like a newer entrepreneur to understand the guardrails of what's acceptable in the outside world.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. Congrats on all your success. Thank you for coming out today. I wanted to know, as a multi-million-dollar company, what do you see going forward as major barriers that you have to overcome?
Major barriers that we have to overcome. I mean, thankfully, we've been growing a lot year over year. I think, to be honest, we have 750 plus employees now going on to 1,000. This is the first time I freaking, managed 750 employees. So as you build a long-term company, the culture and, like just that continuity of, mind and mentality is so important. And I tell all our team members, like, I don't have the opportunity to interview every single employee that comes through our doors anymore. It's just not reality. So I'm going to instill our core values in you and our culture in you so that when you go hire the next generation of talent that comes to GOAT, please keep in mind these core values so that you can keep growing or we can keep this culture going. And so it's so important as you build a large company to have the same mentality throughout the ranks.
Hi, thank you for coming in tonight. My question's about Flight Club and sort of your partnership with them. Could you talk further about really like what that looks like and how you allow them as like, I know Flight Club from the Fairfax location and they're like an established brand. How do you allow them to keep sort of their brand while still involving, GOAT candidly?
In 2017, we always looked up to Flight Club. Flight Club started in 2005. It was the iconic brick and mortar location for sneaker consignment. So when we started in 2015, 10 years after Flight Club was born, we really looked up to them. And we said, hey, let's be the digital version of Flight Club, to be honest, right? In 2017, we kind of grew a lot and we kind of surpassed what Flight Club was as a business. And so we learned that they were trying to raise money to build a tech team to kind of compete against us, et cetera. And we always knew we wanted to get into omni-channel retail. Physical retail was very important. Sneakers are a tactile experience. So we said, hey, and we were friendly with Flight Club, the founders. So when we heard they were trying to raise money, we were just like, hey, instead of compete against each other constantly, we have a massive tech team. We could help build out your tech. You have physical retail. You could help us learn a thing or two about physical retail. So why don't we just join forces? We can acquire you instead of you guys us competing, and let's just do this together. So that's how that acquisition came about, and it was great. Like we just learned from each other on the whole side of things, and we wanted to make sure Flight Club was true to its brand. I mean, Flight Club's the analog version from New York City, whereas GOAT's like the digital style fashion from LA, and so they have a whole separate brand team. We have a whole separate brand team. They have a whole separate marketing team, et cetera, where they control that experience so that that culture stays true to them versus on GOAT.
Hi, you mentioned a lot of GOAT initiatives such as Black Friday, GOAT Clean, Under Retail, and AR. My personal favorite's GOAT DIY. So this is kind of a two-part question. How do you continue to engage your community of 20 million users and grow that? And then how do you guys go about the process of feature development in like the tech industry of sneaker culture?
It's about authenticity. Like you can't force anything, especially, with this community, anything you do that's inauthentic is going to get snuffed out. So, things like DIY, it's because we're passionate about the culture and we're like, hey, let's have people express themselves on a blank white canvas. The sneaker just happens to be the canvas, but let's go and do that and see what people create. And it's just like, it amazes us at the stuff that comes out. So UGC is such an important part of the GOAT ecosystem. I think DIY is a key component of that. When you're talking about product features, I mean, we have 100 different product features that we talk about on a daily basis. And we're always resource constrained. As a startup, you're gonna have 20 ideas. You can only do 3 of them well. And so it is a rigorous process. I have a whole leadership team. We meet all the time. We get input from everyone in the company, and we're just like, let's figure out the most impactful things to help our consumers. And we think about it through that lens before we build.
Hey, Eddy. So my question is more about from when you launched your company of GOAT towards and then to product market fit. Can you kind of talk about the process you did with how frequently you did feedback with the users, how actually impactful it was towards the product, and how many shifts you made within the product towards that final feature of the product market fit?
I'll tell you a funny story. There was a very prominent person in the sneaker industry. If I had told you his name, you would know, but I'm not, because when we switched from showing seller photos to only kind of our stock GOAT imagery that you see on the site now, this one prominent sneaker guy was like, this will never work. Buyers need to see seller photos to have trust in buying something. And he was just like, you're completely wrong move. And we were like, no, trust us. We need consumers to trust GOAT, that we are the company that will authenticate for you better than anyone can. So we're going to show you this imagery that is, just one sneaker or, this stock sneaker versus every single seller photo. And he did not agree. And we took a big gamble, but you have to make bets sometimes. And you can listen to your consumers. And we get a lot of feedback on different parts of the app, but core fundamental parts of your business, you have to trust your gut in those instances.
Same thing repeated when Eric Baker started StubHub. Right company, StubHub. They went to, who started Ticketmaster? Fred? Let's come his last. They went to the founder of Ticketmaster, the king of the ticket industry. And he said, this will never work. Eric, this will never work, and yelled at him. And they said, we just didn't believe him. We just knew, we saw the market already, just like they'd seen a part of the market that someone else. You have to be the expert on your core elements of your business. And once you believe that, you sort of have to tune some of that out. But you definitely should do market, research and know your market, know your customer better than anything, know your data, analytics, customer acquisition costs, all of that.
So you talked about importance to take the punches. I want to know, what do you tell yourself during that time? Because a lot of entrepreneurs say that, but what actually goes through your head when you lose a bunch of money or whatever? How do you get back up in those instances?
Did you watch the Wilder Fury fight this past weekend?
Yeah.
It feels like that now. I don't know. Again, I don't usually have to tell myself anything. I just because it's kind of built into who I am, it's just whatever, I just got shat on, let's just keep going. I'm just internally motivated to prove people wrong, I guess. Obviously I have bad days and I'm sad, but it's just I guess I have a bad memory. I just forget about it and I just keep going. So it's one of these things that's just innate to kind of our drive, I guess, yeah.
Will there be a GOAT retail store in the future?
Never say never.
Or, what's the utility of that to you?
So we've done a pop-up. Bergdorf Goodman is an iconic sneaker, or not a sneaker, luxury retailer in New York. And they don't do a lot of collaborations with people, but we did a pop-up in a Bergdorf, and it was great because we brought a much younger audience to them, and there was an intersection of luxury and sneakers. Definitely we'll do more cool activations like that, and then like I said, physical retail is something that's an important part of the sneaker journey. So, yeah.
You mentioned that back in 2015 you dropped your job cold turkey just to kind of find your path. I'm a big mindset guy, so can you talk about the mindset that you had in building your company, and then also now that you are where you are, what kind of purpose do you derive from your daily interactions, your daily functions? Do you feel like you found your purpose? Do you feel like you're happy? I'm not trying to be a psychology.
Yeah.
Anything.
No, I get
but
you.
Do you feel like you found happiness?
Yeah. So in terms of the mindset for us to quit and start our journey, I talked about it a little bit where, it was just eating away at us, that the fact that work was not our passion, corporate work was not our passion, that we had to do something on our own, or otherwise we would regret it for the rest of our lives. And that was just a burning mindset in my mind where I just wasn't really focused on work anymore, right? It was let's do something. So that's what happened then. And in terms of mindset, I think it's kind of a parlaying to your question where we just knew we would succeed. It was, a lot of people have self-doubt and believe me, when you've pivoted many times, you kind of have self-doubt, but it was very fleeting. It was always maybe this isn't going to work out over time, but instantly it was, we're eventually going to figure it out. Because we could have quit after Beard Papas in 09, 010. We could have quit after we pivoted with Grub With Us. We could have quit after we pivoted all those other times, and we wouldn't have gotten to GOAT. So it was only that mentality of, hey, we're going to figure it out. Did we actually get here? And we wouldn't have had this company if we threw in the towel. I'm not saying that we would have tried forever and we would have succeeded, but I'm pretty sure I would have gone another 10 years trying if GOAT wasn't the thing that worked. It's just a mentality that we had. And now, Yeah, we've been fortunate where we've helped grow the industry. We have a lot of sales, a lot of employees, etc. I think the mentality now is like, hey, we have an impactful business. Let's make sure to not disappoint our customers. I mean, we still disappoint our customers to this day sometimes, and we have to get better at that. And I have a responsibility to 750 employees now to make sure we keep course and we don't run out of money, that we constantly grow, improve, that we're outlasting the competition, etc. So I think the burden only gets bigger, and your mentality is, okay, shifting from like finding that idea, surviving, I'm going to succeed, etc., to now that you have succeeded, like, how do I take care of everyone? How do I make people just even more passionate about the space?
I also heard someone else say it this way. It only takes one. If you're swinging for a fence, I mean, if you're a lawyer, consultant, investment banker, you can have a very steady life. You can make millions of dollars. You absolutely can. You have to stick with it for a long time, make partner, move up, and it's a very predictable life. And that's okay for some people. And frankly, my friends that are lawyers, they're retiring, now. But if you have the desire to have a couple swings at it, I mean, it only takes one, right? He probably had 10, 15 different companies he tried, and one of them is going to be bigger than any other career he ever had. So like that type of like, I'm going to just like buck up again, put my money up, that's a real entrepreneur's mentality. And it's not easy to train yourself that way. It takes that sort of like, that confidence that like, we didn't get him this time, we'll get him the next time. I'm not ashamed. I failed. It's okay. I didn't fail. The concept failed. By the way, did the parents come around now? They like the business?
They finally came around. They still don't understand what I do exactly, but they came around.
I'm sure they explain. Oh, my son sells used sneakers.
Exactly.
It's like, that's pretty much captures it. This was a masterclass in startups. I can't thank you enough for coming. Let's thank Eddy Lu.